Wallace, author of the Hollow Man series, owner of Hollow Man Publishing, and Frank Fiore from Fridays with Frank. Frank, how are you? What's going on, man?
Well, we're pursuing the last book, yeah, which is going to be very interesting to see how I solve the problem of Jack the Ripper. So
Well, we're not going to give that away. So let's go first, Frank, with book one. Explain book one to us without giving it away. Go.
okay, well, let me get the thing up here. Hold on a second. Anyway, beside the hook of that Jack the Ripper is in America, and we have a British sleuth tracking him down, which for a Western, that's pretty interesting. Um, we have elements in the story. We have a partner of Jonathan who is Charles Abbott, and he's really a uh, he's really a Scotland Yard detective that's out there to find him and to catch him catch him in the act of committing the murder, thinking that he is the um, Jack the Ripper because he knows so much about him. Or if he's not Jack the Ripper, then he's also in cahoots with him, working with him. So we got that uh, process going on. We got the idea of this Watson and Sherlock Holmes combination working together to work the cases. But each case really is a Western myth that is explored, and the myth is something where people are brutally murdered. So you go to each one of the books, and the first book, called The Case of the Screaming Tunnel, is an actual myth of of a of a tunnel that people enter, and they're immediately uh, cremated, so to speak, by excuse me, they're killed going into that tunnel, burn to no effect. The second one is The Case of the Lost Ship of the Desert, and that's another Western myth that a pirate ship at one time did end up in the Salton Sea, and so they got that gold myth, and people who go after it are brutally murdered, and so the Smythe is drawn to that, to think of that murder and the Case of the Screaming Tunnel, the horrible, horrific murders, and thinking that's the MO of the Jack the Ripper. Then the third book is The Case of the Red Ghost Camel, and people may know that back in the late 1800s, the U.S. Army used camels instead of horses. They thought that would be a lot better to have a camel brigade as opposed to cavalry on horses. And when the experiment failed, they just let the camels loose and running around the Southwest. And one of the myths is that there's a red ghost camel running around out there killing people. And so again, that's attracted to Jonathan Smythe and Charles Abbott. Then the fourth book is The Case of the Prescott Tunnels, and again, the prostitute is brutally murdered, and they show up and in order to investigate that, and of course other things develop out of it. And then you have the fifth book, which is The Case of the Deadly Water Babies, Pyramid Lake. Again, people are being their throats are being slit on this lake, and that sounds like the MO of the Ripper. And so Mike goes out and investigates that. And the last book, which will be published soon, is The Case of the Murder Mansion. And a lot of the stuff in the Murder Mansion is based on actual facts and the brutal and horrible murders that were created there. That's the last book in the series. And the question is, did they unmask the Ripper? Is that it, or is that something else? So anyway, those are the six books, and we're hoping that the sizzle reel that we're creating for the Case of the Prescott Tunnels will be accepted, and be able to do a full feature of that, and have all six books in a series, maybe a 12 TV series or something like that, because each book could be broken down into one half hour segments.
All right. Okay. Now, Frank, what is your ultimate hope for the series for the readers?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What is your ultimate hope for the readers that read your book? What they get
Oh, well,
out of it?
they're going to be entertained. Obviously, that's the job of a fiction author is to entertain. So the reader comes away and saying that was money well spent. Okay, and so and entertain in a way that they never thought of before. That's why I'm using the idea of Jack the Ripper out west to create a western based on the hunt for Jack the Ripper out west, and using a British sleuth and not an American marshal or something like that, but a British sleuth with his own particular way of looking at the West and dealing with the Wild West.
What types of things do you put into your books with the West to kind of give those backgrounds and layouts of the West in your
Yeah, well,
books?
because it's a Western, it has everything that's in a Western: guns, guns, fights, stampedes, train robberies, coach robbery, all the stuff that you expect to have in a Western is in those books.
Okay. What do you find most fascinating about Westerns, Frank?
Well, because Westerns are a real the fundamental nature of America. Here you have the rugged individual against the environment or another individual or an organization, and so it's up to it's a celebration of individualism, uh, surpassing any kind of challenges. While that are pure and simple, the Westerns are simple devices. The good guy and the bad guy, okay, or the good guy in a bad environment, or what have you, and that's a good reflection of America and American individualism.
What do you, so like thinking about specifically, where do you get your information about the West in your research to write these books?
Well, that's it. Yeah, I use Google, okay, and now I'm using AI, which is more thorough and better. And so, in fact, if you're an author and you're not using AI, you're missing out on a great resource.
Can you give me more examples of how you use AI in Westerns?
Okay, well, suppose I wanted to find out a particular period. I wanted to find out, like in one, I wanted to find out what the transportation was like in a particular town or out west. How did they get from one place to the other? Well, they of course trains, coaches, but also if you enter, like go into a cosmopolitan area, you got to do the research to find out before automobiles, how did people get around? What was the transportation like and like that? And so that's where AI is really helpful, and it will describe an actual environment for you. So what's the environment like for transportation in the late 1800s, and it'll come up with a whole list of possible ways of transporting people. And then you might want to find out what the environment is like back in a particular time. And they talk about a Western town. You ask for some details of what a Western town would look like. Okay, and that's what is good about using that kind of research, AI especially.
Okay. All right. So let's go even further with that AI process. That kind of helped you with the series, laying out the series, right? And some of the ideas.
Yeah. Because in each book I had to come up with one of those Western uh, one of the Western myths, and so I did a search and came up with five myths for the first five books, and the sixth book was based on again factual data of serial killers in the late 1800s.
And that's an interesting thing that the serial killer fans are going to enjoy the last Western book, aren't they?
Yeah. I'm not going to give too much away, but yeah.
Yeah, studying serial killers and seeing specific things. Let's talk Jack the Ripper now. What did you learn new about Jack the Ripper by writing these books?
Well, I always had a fascinating with him. I mean, just like most people, as, who he was, what he did, and I've seen several movies on Jack the Ripper, both fictional and non-fictional. And yes, he's a very interesting but horrible character. And his motivations were just about that he hated women. He just really did. And what kind of a man was he? Was he just a butcher, that happened to have the necessary devices to use when he's flaying these women, or is he a professional? Was he a doctor? So a lot of that was said that he may be a doctor, and I didn't deal with that much at all. I just dealt with the myth and how and the Smythe learning about the myth and then moving on to the next myth in each book.
Now, Jack the Ripper, one more thing about Jack the Ripper. He's real, right?
Oh
The
yeah,
real Jack Ripper.
exactly.
The Ripper. Would you look at doing using another Western with another serial killer?
Well, I can't think of anyone that has that not that as far as marketing, has that kind of a
The serial
eh?
killer. I'm going to throw Paul in. Paul, how popular serial killers right now?
But serial killers are really, almost as honest to God, almost as popular as romance novels.
Yeah.
Serial killers are something, but the problem that you might have, Frank, is with serial killer in the West is that they weren't identified as serial killers until somewhere in the 50s, actually, 1950s or so.
Mhm.
So after that, so you'd have to kind of meld them into a, yeah, it was the same guy kind of thing. Yeah.
All
So.
right. So everyone needs to go to frankfiore.com right now and pick up Frank's books. Appreciate it, Frank.